Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome to Tone Talks. This is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks again. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I wanted to do a brief video on what we've seen from Tyrese over this last 2-week period. I wanted to discuss it as I see it in context of a larger black wealth discussion that I've been having with you for a few years now. As you know, I did the piece, The Decadent Veil on Black Celebrity and the black illusion around black celebrity and how we context wealth in all the wrong ways because we're exposed to a false narrative of wealth by a black celebrity. And I think Tyrese's breakdown / rant on video kind of displays that. I wanted to have a discussion with you today in a way that allows us to have a productive view on this thing as we unveil the decadent veil. So what did we see? We saw Tyrese release a video where he was talking about his daughter and the legal fees involving his daughter, and he started to cry. Now, I'm not here to berate the man for crying or anything like that. What I am here to talk about is what happened, what unraveled after that in terms of Will Smith and Jada Pinkett and the millions of dollars, and then the take back on that whole statement. And to give you context on why I see it as a whole problem, the way Black America digested wealth when we were dealing with what Tyrese was saying versus what the reality of wealth is in this country. So to frame it, we have Tyrese, who came to fame from a Coca-Cola ad and had a career, a stellar career as a R&B artist, transitioned into doing film. We saw him in Transformers and Fast and Furious. But we also saw a Tyrese that represented everything that I say about the Decadent Veil, where off camera, he basically exuded this idea of the black arrival to affluence. I've said this in the past few videos because me and Sandy Darity, along with Dark Hamilton and several other economists, have a major piece coming out on the racial wealth gap and the myths around it, and one of them is black celebrity. That'll be one of the 10 myths. And actually, I believe that black celebrity has created a belief that we have access to millions too, and none of the data supports that. I've done the piece with Brunig. I've shared that with you. I'll share it with you later in this video that shows that black people don't really have millionaires like that. So you have Tyrese showing the Maserati with the Obama 08 plate that he had put on it, driving around, showing that black people have money too, covering up the narrative of a Skid Row in Los Angeles, where 60% of Skid Row, the largest aggregation of homeless in the nation, is black men. Covering up a reality of Los Angeles where, as I've shown before, the middle black family is worth $200 according to the Color of Wealth report that Sandy Darity, Dark Hamilton, and several others did with the Federal Reserve. $200. So then you have Tyrese finally admit, and that's the biggest part I think that comes out in the whole crying video, is the admission that wealth doesn't exist in the black community like that. That we can't deal with catastrophe. That when things happen, there are major issues. But the problem is, just like we saw kind of with Kanye, where immediately he kind of pulled back on not having, the issue with the $52 million. We saw that with Kanye West. What we saw from Tyrese is this story. And the story that came out was an article that was released that Will Smith and Jada Pinkett had given him $5 million to keep him afloat. Now, I when I read it, knew that this is bordering on impossible. Bordering on impossible. We don't know what Will Smith's liquid state is. I know that $5 million is a lot of money for anybody in the country, including billionaires. So to think that Will Smith gifted Tyrese $5 million to keep off social media just showed to me a borderline craze in black America about wealth. Just a total lack of exposure. When you look at the top 1%, pulling up an article right now, Brunig did this article last week. Shout out to Matt. He does some of the best work on the net as far as charting. And what he showed is that the average gift of the top 1% to their children is like 4.8 million. So to think that a black man in this country, in this time, gave another black man $5 million to stay off social media, it just shows you don't understand wealth. You should immediately have seen that and questioned it all. Not just question, know that it's almost impossible. This man is crazy. So in addition, what you see is, to give it context, one of my good friends, Yvette Carnell, she did an interview of Monique. Monique talked about how during like Precious, she only got 50,000. You can pull up that interview, pulling up a screenshot right here. It's here on YouTube. And she only got 50,000 to do Precious, but that's not what I'm gonna bring up. When they asked her to go to Cannes to promote the Oscar, they didn't want to even pay her. Not 20,000 or 30,000, nothing. So to think that a black Hollywood hands over $5 million to each other, it just shows how the decadent belt ain't playing about keeping us in a lull. So Tyrese, I'm pulling up the Instagram post so we get it right. He posted this post and he says, when we show up for each other, there's nothing that can't be done. I repeat, nothing. My wife kept the news away from me because I've been on with lawyers all day, but our family and our sister Jada Pinkett Smith and my brother Will Smith just sent us $5 million to help keep us afloat. You guys asked me to get off and stay off the internet. Now that my daughter's legal fees are paid, we'll listen. The Smiths and their whole family has always shown up for the Gibsons. Uncle Will, you're an uncle for real. And then it continues on. I mean, the border, like, this is just problematic all the way around. So he then, to my understanding, meaning Tyrese, once insiders from Will Smith's camp come out and say, well, you know, we didn't give him no $5 million, he says we still didn't receive a check. But in the Instagram post, you say he just sent us $5 million. I think that one of the things that this exposes is just how crazy we are when it comes to wealth. Both inside of Tyrese camp and people who read that article and gave it a time of day. Like, the dynamic of black wealth in this country is a reality that black wealth hardly exists. And as I wrote before, black wealth hardly exists even when you include NBA, NFL, and rap stars. The dynamic in this country, whether you want to accept it or not, is that we descended from American slaves in this country that picked cotton, that were traded as currency, that only recently got access to jobs. The dynamic in this country is that if you don't understand that, your politics will always be wrong. Because you're going to be trying to be a super capitalist when they won't even let you in the ball game. Ask Byron Allen that. And so what I continue on and talk about, you know, is we got to have a narrative, and those people that watch my channel all the time already got this laid out about the layout of the land. And you're not just talking to somebody that's one of these bloggers on the net. You know, I write about this at a high level with economists. I've interviewed Shapiro. I've interviewed Decadent. You can check those out right there. These are some of the top economists in terms of the racial wealth gap, reparations, all of it. I've interviewed Byron Allen. You can check that out right here. It's a friend of mine. Talked for hundreds of hours. So the narrative on wealth, I'm giving it to you in a real way so you can understand. Not so you can feel like you don't have no opportunity, but so you can frame your family, frame your identity in reality, not in fantastical ideas that black people give other black people $5 million in cash to get off the internet. So there's 20 million black families. Essentially, the middle black family without the family car is worth $4,000. If you take out the TV and the clothes and all that shouldn't be counted either, we probably back down to like $1,500-1,700. The reality is that only like 380,000 black families are worth more than $1 million in this country, and they largely are boomers. It's their house and their pension. There isn't a wealth class in this country. There isn't this idea of this fantastical unicorn group running around that can hand out $5 million to people. On the flip side, with white America, 15% of their race, 13 million families, worth more than $1 million. That means everybody, brother, sister, everybody worth $1 million. You $1 million, you $1 million, you $1 million. 1 million of their families are worth 10 million. So you might have one brother worth 12, the other two, the sister and the brother worth $1.5 million, and we all good. That's not the black narrative in this country. Whether you on Coca-Cola, Fast and Furious, or doing Netflix movies like Will Smith is now. And we got to understand the consequence of that so that then we can demand more. If we don't understand the consequence, we're not going to demand more because we think we good. And this is where Tyrese coming out saying what he said is so problematic. And I think that further context of $5 million is to understand when you look at Donna Brazil's book. Donna Brazil, former interim chair of the DNC, who wrote this polarizing book this last week, or released it, I should say. What she said is the DNC was in debt $24 million, and that allowed Hillary Clinton to come in and kind of piecemeal them, essentially loan them little bits of money. The DNC was $24 million in debt. So you gotta have some kind of context to understand $5 million is a lot of money. You can't just let people make you think that the word million is normal, like the word thousand, like the word hundred. When the middle black family is worth $4,000, the word thousand isn't normal. I think what has happened is we've reframed our identity as though we got the same access as white folk, and we don't. And if you don't tell that to your children, your wife, yourself, your husband, your mama, you're gonna drive yourself crazy in this new America. Because this new America ain't playing. And I think that what we see is Tyrese, he admits that he was taking some sort of therapeutic drug, and that's why this craze set on. Well, the first therapy we all need, including Tyrese, is a reality check. And Tone Talk's here to give it to you. And I guess what I start to see is we gotta understand that when we grasp for wealth, it makes us vulnerable to these charades. What we gotta understand is we live in a second Gilded Age now. There was a first Gilded Age where the robber barons took all the wealth. Carnegie, Rockefeller. You should read their books. About how Carnegie, Rockefeller, all these people, were robber barons. We're in the second phase of that. When you look right now, Bill Gates, Bezos, owner of Amazon and Washington Post, and Buffett are worth more than the bottom half of America, according to inequality.org. That came out this week. We live in a different kind of time. We live in the kind of time that if you don't have a grasp of yourself and the wealth that's around you, it could drive you crazy as well. And what I start to see here is Black America really needs to uncover this decadent veil, not only to see ourselves, but to see this celebrity for what it is. Just some more black folks that ain't got no bread either, struggling to survive. Go to tonetalks.org to subscribe or donate. I want to keep this discussion going. Go to Dash Radio this Friday. I'm going to be back on with my radio show at 7 p.m. Pacific, or you can come here on Tone Talks channel and it'll be streaming live. Essentially, I'm going to end today with a 90-second video that explains the reality of wealth in this country in black and white. Please check this out and share this video. Let's get this discussion going. Many people think this thing is just about Tyrese going crazy. We're robber barons. We're in the second phase of that. When you look right now, Bill Gates, Bezos, owner of Amazon and Washington Post, and Buffett are worth more than the bottom half of America, according to inequality.org. That came out this week. We live in a different kind of time. We live in the kind of time that if you don't have a grasp of yourself and the wealth that's around you, it could drive you crazy as well. And what I start to see here is Black America really needs to uncover this decadent veil, not only to see ourselves, but to see this celebrity for what it is. Just some more black folks that ain't got no bread either, struggling to survive. Go to tonetalks.org to subscribe or donate. I want to keep this discussion going. Go to Dash Radio this Friday. I'm going to be back on with my radio show at 7 p.m. Pacific, or you can come here on Tone Talks channel and it'll be streaming live. Essentially, I'm going to end today with a 90-second video that explains the reality of wealth in this country in black and white. Please check this out and share this video. Let's get this discussion going. Many people think this thing is just about Tyrese going crazy. Thank you. Tone Talks presents the reality behind the racial wealth gap. In America, we understand race as a literal foot race, where whites just got a lead based on effort, when in actuality, due to several hundred years of slavery and 100 years of Jim Crow, black people were more like the shoes whites wore down to run forward economically. The recent data